DFS DJ Nation, what is up? What is happening? We are back again for another week. We are 2 days, well, almost a day away from Christmas. It was 2 nights before Christmas. Not a creature was stirring. Only COVID. I mean, it's we thought last week was rough with COVID. This we got nothing on that. Like this week, every day we're getting multiple people ruled out with COVID.
Yeah, so when you guys are listening to this podcast, whatever, Friday, Saturday, the guys that we suggest may be ruled out with COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it's rough out there in these streets for COVID right now. Dalvin Cook, he is out for the weekend. He may not even be back for week 17 because the 10 days out would put him at Sunday. So I don't even know if he can get cleared by then, if he can't get cleared till Sunday. So he may be out week 17 as well. Austin Eckler's on COVID. Travis Kelce's on COVID. Tyreek Hill's on COVID. The list goes on and on and on and on. Plus, we got injuries like Leonard Fournette, who's out. So just rough in these streets. So regardless of that, I do still think this week's slate is better than last week's slate. I don't know if you agree, Maddie.
I don't know. On paper, it looks good, but with all these guys being ruled out, and like Brady missing, a lot of his weapons. I don't know. This slate is just kind of turned into an interesting one. It's definitely on paper, like the team matchups are way more enjoyable than the ones we had last week. I think the highest total was, that Lions Arizona game that was 47. Everything else was 44 and below. This week we've got a 49 total and everything else is 46 and below. So a slight boost to the totals this week, but it's really not much. I think we're going to see a lot of low scoring games again, and like we talked about last week, those guys who can go for multiple touchdowns are the guys we're going to want to focus on in these low scoring games.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, so why don't we just go ahead and jump right into it? Let's hit on the quarterback position. We go position by position. If you are new here, go through it. At the very end, we will go through and do a lineup for week 16. I will say this. Last week, we were on the plays. Maddie, you were spot on the Huntley call, who balled with out Andrews. For 35 with Andrews. So we were on that. So we were on the plays. Not so much with the Jacksonville side. That at least
our team we built.
Yeah, that was rough. So regardless of that, but we are a forward-thinking podcast, so we're on to the next week. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Quarterback, Pat Mahomes still staying alive. I think they just put him in bubble wrap and just put him away from everybody. Like, you are not going to be around anybody, so you don't get COVID. But he's 7,700. Josh Allen 7,500. Tom Brady is 7,400. Justin Herbert 72. Lamar Jackson, who is questionable for this week, and has not practiced yet, so it could be another Huntley week. At 6,900, Stafford 6,700, Jalen Hurts, who continues to ball at 6,400, Kirk Cousins at 6,200, Russell Wilson at 61, no thanks, and then Huntley, who has been priced up to $6K. So, Maddie, where are we starting out with quarterback this week?
To be honest, I'm just going to keep doing this whole pay down at QB thing until it bites me in the butt. It hasn't, come back and haunted me yet. I mean, Huntley was the guy last week, 5,400. We paid down for him because, these top guys just aren't scoring these ceiling numbers unless you played Josh Allen 2 weeks ago against Tampa Bay when he ran for over 100 yards. But, I mean, we're not getting those ceiling outcomes from these top guys in terms of passing out production. And, Mahomes with no pass catchers, Josh Allen in an ugly game projected against New England. If you remember that game they played a couple of weeks ago where Mac Jones threw 3 passes. That game is going to be gross. And more than likely, Tom Brady is going to be without Godwin and possibly without Mike Evans. Is Antonio Brown projected back? I know he was suspended, but he's healthy and he's ready to play, right? Okay, so I mean, at least he's got AB coming back, so that'll be good. But I mean, that's probably going to be. I mean, that Bucs offense hasn't looked great over the last few weeks either. So I don't want to pay $7,400 for him. I mean, Herbert I guess would make sense as a leverage play off of the mega chalk Justin Jackson that we're going to get because Austin Eckler is out. But I mean, even then, Houston has been respectable against the pass this year, their defense, and you can run all over them. And I know that's not really what the Chargers want to do is just run the ball over and over again. But I mean, with the success that they're going to be able to have on the ground, I mean, Herbert is interesting in tournaments and large field. I may not get there in my single entry stuff, just because he does have still have a pretty low ceiling, but I mean he's been pretty consistent, scoring 25 to 30 points most weeks. He's got a couple weeks where he's over that in the 35 to 40 range, but I don't know. I just don't see him getting to the 40-point mark against Houston, where Houston probably can't really keep pace on the other side. So, but Herbert's definitely somebody I'm going to keep in the back of my mind as this week progresses. The Lamar Huntley situation is interesting to watch. We don't know if Lamar's going to play this week yet or not. He hasn't been practicing. So at this point, I'm assuming it's Huntley again, which means at 6K, Huntley is interesting against Cincinnati. Lamar in this spot scored 23 points against Cincinnati a couple weeks ago. And I'm expecting Cincinnati to put up a ton of points on the other side against this Baltimore defense that can't defend the pass. We saw Jamar Chase go for 200 yards a couple weeks ago against Baltimore. So I'm really expecting Burrow to be able to have success. And if that's the case, this Baltimore offense isn't going to just be able to run the ball like they want to. We're going to see Huntley have to unleash it again. And we've seen it, a couple of weeks now with Huntley, that he can move the ball down the field and put up points, and he can do it with his legs as well. He had 73 rush yards just last week. So that's rare that you get, this kind of guy at only 6K. I mean, even if he only scores 20 points, he's not going to burn you. And you think, how does he get me 20 points? Well, it's 200 passing yards, 40 rushing yards, and he just accounts for 2 touchdowns, and you're at 20 points. And I mean, that's not that unrealistic for any quarterback to do that. That has Huntley's skill set on any given week, regardless of what the matchup is. So I definitely like Huntley at 6K. I think Cousins is interesting with Dalvin Cook out. That Rams defense has not been great this year. And, I think with people are just going to look to jam in Madison, but you actually can't run on the Rams, but you can throw all over them. So Kirk Cousins at 6,200 is very interesting to me. And especially if he gets Adam Thielen back, because we saw Justin Jefferson against the Bears was getting double teamed the entire game. And, with the Rams having Jalen Ramsey and on the other side, they're going to be able to focus their attention to Jefferson a little bit. But if Thielen's back, then that kind of Thielen will be able to open up things a little bit more for Jefferson in that offense as a whole. So I'm expecting Thielen to play because, there was rumors that he was a game time decision, was almost able to play this past week against Chicago. So I'm expecting him to be in. And if he's in, I think Kirk Cousins at 6,200 in the highest total game of the week with a 49-point total. And the spread is only 3.5. You would think that the Rams would be favored by a lot more, but it's a 49-point total, only a 3.5-point spread. So I am definitely considering Kirk Cousins, especially if Lamar plays and I don't get to play Huntley. And then I mentioned Burrow. I probably will just end up with one of Chase or Higgins and not play Burrow on the other side. And yes, Ayuk just caught the touchdown. I didn't want to spoil it for you. I know you've got a great showdown lineup going, and you needed Ayuk to score.
I'm in first. I'm in first, baby.
Let's go.
I'm in first.
Win that Christmas money. Let's go. How much is it?
4,000. Let's
go, dude. You're gonna get fucking your whole season amount back, and then more.
That's I know, but there is still 2 minutes left.
You know what's gonna happen is this is gonna go to overtime,
or they're gonna kick a field goal and it's gonna drop me out.
True. Well, you've got AJ Brown captain, so that's good. All right. Well, you've got a little sweat here as we're live. That's pretty sweet. Kev's got a sweat. But no, the last QB that I'll just talk about real quick, Justin Fields, and kind of all the same reasons that I mentioned Huntley. A guy that's a dual threat combo at $5,200, and he's playing against Seattle. I know Chicago wants to run the ball, but I mean, if Seattle's able to score points on the other side, I mean, Fields has thrown for 33 and 39 attempts the last 2 weeks. He's got 9 and 7 rush attempts for 74 and 35 yards. So Fields is pretty much going to get you close to that 20-point range, and you can play him naked. You don't have to play any Bears with him. And I'm expecting Russell Wilson on the other side to kind of tear up the Chicago secondary a little bit, especially if he gets Tyler Lockett back this week. So I am pretty much going to pay down for one of those QBs. Most likely it's either going to be Cousins, Huntley, or Justin Fields more than likely. And I won't even rule out playing Russ at only 6,100. That I think that's too cheap. And I'm assuming that's a guy that's on your list.
Yeah. Okay. So I got to recalibrate here. Got a little sweat going on, but with only 2 minutes left in the game. Anyway, so here's where I come in on this slate at quarterback, right? I think that I think Josh Allen actually makes a lot of sense, and I think people are going to be afraid to play him because of what happened in the previous matchup. But I think that Josh Allen does make a little bit of sense here at 7,500. I think now we have a consolidated target share without Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley's absolutely out; he's unvaccinated. But Josh Allen, we know what his ceiling is, right? And he has probably the highest ceiling on the slate for anybody probably not named Patrick Mahomes. But with the Patrick Mahomes situation, with them missing Tyreek, with them missing Kelsey as of right now, I think Josh Allen probably has the highest ceiling on this slate. Brings the rushing upside. Last week, he looked good in that matchup against the he looked good on the ground. There wasn't a concern with the ankle or anything like that, right? So we didn't really have to worry about that. And so for me, when it comes to Josh Allen, like I think that I don't think he's going to carry any ownership. It's a matchup against the Patriots. We've seen this a few weeks ago, but that game was completely different. We're talking about 40-mile-an-hour winds and everything else that was going on there in that game. And this is also an absolute must win for the Bills. If they lose this game, they very well could be out of the playoffs, right? And so I think a low-owned $7,500 Josh Allen. You can stack him with Gabe Davis if you want. You can stack him with Stephon Diggs, though I think Gabe Davis makes a little bit more sense going away from that because I would expect J.C. Jackson is probably shadowing Stephon Diggs, right? And then you also have Dawson Knox that we can go to here in this same matchup. So I don't mind getting a little bit different and going Josh Allen and paying up at quarterback where other people aren't, because I think there's great pay down spots at running back that's going to allow us to be able to pay up a little bit. And so for me, when it comes to the rest of these guys at quarterback, like listen, the Rams Minnesota game I feel like is probably going to be one of the more popular on the slate. You have a really bad matchup, a really bad secondary in Minnesota. It doesn't matter what corner they have. All of their corners are horrific, right? And so that really doesn't matter to me right now. But so I think if I'm going one direction there on either side, it's probably Matt Stafford, right? Just because going against the other side at 6,200. But so for Stafford, I think you do that. But I absolutely want the one guy you brought up that I absolutely agree on that I'm probably going to have the most of is Joe Burrow at 5,900. It's a little bit scary because they are an offense that really will run the ball if you allow them to, but I don't think that's going to be the case. The last time these two teams played, he had his best fantasy day of the season, and Baltimore is missing their entire secondary. Everybody's out. They're hurt. They're on COVID. Their defense is missing a bunch of pieces, and to be honest with you, I just don't see how they're in what I think they follow a very similar blueprint to what the Packers did and just threw all over them. They said, we're not going to try to run on you. We saw A.J. Dillon had one of the lowest touch shares he's had in a while. He only played like 30% of the snaps, and they said, no, we're just going to throw the rock, right? And I think that's what they do here. And at 5,900, that's incredibly too cheap for Joe Burrow. Yes, it is a divisional game, so that gives me some pause because these divisional games can kind of go sideways a little bit. But overall, like he is probably in the best spot on the slate because of matchup. What scares me about Herbert, well, I love Herbert. Justin Herbert's been excellent this year. He's been one of the best fantasy quarterbacks you have. The problem with him is I don't know against Houston, like, do they really open up the offense as much? Do they just run the ball, play a little bit more conservative, win this game outright, and keep it moving? Unless Houston could keep this game close and push them, I don't know how much they do throw the ball there, but I don't mind Justin Herbert because he carries that upside. But Jalen Hurts at 6,400, the dude just snipes every touchdown away. Every touchdown. Miles Sanders has absolutely 0 touchdowns. Okay? Whew, we are still in first. And so Jalen Hurts, though, because of his rushing floor, because of his rushing upside, even if they're able to get ahead, Jalen Hurts has been the model of consistency this year. I mean, he has every game this year, every game but one, he's been at least a top 10 scoring quarterback. So the floor is absolutely there for them. He's not that expensive. And I honestly would just play him naked. I don't think you have to run him back with anybody. You don't have to play him with anybody. I think you simply just play him naked and keep it moving. Because he is. There's no other quarterback, or there's not many quarterbacks on this slate that are just a lock for 20 DK points almost every single week. And so playing Jalen Hurts makes a lot of sense to me. And like I said, I'm going to go naked if I go that direction, right? And then from there, the other quarterback options on this slate, I think Huntley. I think that does make sense if you want to go that direction again. But I have a feeling he's going to be a hell of a lot more popular.
Yeah, if he's popular, I'm going to be out. I'll play Cousins at 62 or Russ at 61 or end up playing Fields down at 52.
Well, people are going to be chasing last week's production, right?
Yeah.
And so,
yeah. And they're going to be priced up as a whole offense, right? Like Mark Andrews is 7K, and they absolutely smashed last week, and they pretty much have to do what they did last week to not Huntley. I mean, he's 6K. I mean, if he can get you 20 to 24, you're still fine at 6K. But I mean, Andrews being at 7K, and if you're playing Huntley, you're probably playing Andrews for the ceiling outcome that we saw last week. But I mean, just the odds that happens again are just so small. When you consider the ownership that they're going to have, which I didn't pull up the ownership pre-show. I can pull that up. You have interest in Russ? I mean, 6,100. That's the cheapest I think he's ever been.
I need this game to end. Sorry. I just don't know if you can trust him. I mean, he's done no. I mean, he has not been great. He didn't, and I don't even know what his ceiling really is. Really, I mean, you have to go way back to week 2 where he scored 26 and 27. But other than that, I mean, his ceiling since week 4. Now, obviously, he had the injury, so he missed time and all that stuff. So that does ends up making does make sense there on that part of it, right? But at the end of the day, we're still talking about. His best game he's had really since he's been back is 21.2 DK points. And so, I mean, he has been this low. He was, against the Rams, I guess that was on a Tuesday night slate, so that's a little bit different, but he was 6,100 in that slate. Now, I get it's against Chicago. Chicago's secondary has been horrendous, so I understand that point of view of it. But it's just I don't know. It just feels a little thin. Like I think the upside's there. Tyler Lockett's back. DK Metcalf's there. But it's just like honestly, watching Russell Wilson play quarterback right now, he looks like a quarterback who just doesn't give a shit. Like he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't have that same fire that you normally see from him. Making plays and no, it's like he drops back, but it's not there. He's either going to take the sack or he's going to and that's it. And so I'm sure he's just fed up with the whole situation. Every year, the offense looks exactly the same. The defense, I mean, it's just like a Groundhog's Day for them, for the most part, And so I think at the end of the day, I think that's sort of the problem here with this offense. And so I don't hate it, but I think it's a really low owned play. I don't think anybody's going to play him, right? Yeah. And what's their total right now? Let's see, 24.5. So it's not terrible. It's not bad. It opened at 25 and a quarter, and now it's down to 24.5. Sorry.
They're gonna kick the field goal. Tannehill just put it on the right side of the field.
I'm just waiting to see how this is going to play out and what this is going to do to me.
San Francisco defense won't lose points because they're in the 14 to 20 point range.
Yeah, so I don't have San Francisco's defense. I'm just worried about the kicker.
Right, but if somebody had like the kicker with the defense, they would net each other out if it went to 21 points.
I'll be so heated if I lose off a kicker field. If I drop way down and off a kicker damn field goal,
you might, because he's got what's he got? 5 points, 6 points, the kicker. So this will put him at 9, 10. This is a 40-something yarder.
I almost want him to miss it and have this go overtime, score a touchdown with one of the guys I have.
True. Well, I won't let you know what happens. You good on QB? You want to jump to running back?
I'm destroying the show right now. So, with what's going on. So, anyways, I think for me, I think that's kind of where I come in at quarterbacks. I think the guys you hit on, but for me, I'm going to stay right around. I'm going to have Josh Allen. I'm going to have Joe Burrow. And I'm going to have, I think those are the two quarterbacks that I want that access to the most. Sure, I'm going to have some of the other guys that'll be a little chalkier. Well, I'll definitely play a little bit of Stafford. Wait, has it updated the points?
He made it. So
I know he made it. But I'm waiting to see if it updated the points. Because if it is, I'm still in first.
Well, click your team, and if it says 20 to 17, then yeah.
It does.
Yeah, then it should be updated. You just got to survive one last play.
No way.
Let's go, Kev. Hell yeah. Merry Christmas. All right, you got to survive one more play. All right, so let's take it to running back. We've got Dalvin Cook, 8,300 at the top. He just got ruled out for this game because he got COVID. Austin Eckler sounds like he has a chance to play, but he already went on a live show yesterday where Austin Eckler actually goes on shows and talks about fantasy football. And he told Dawson Knox on that show to pick up Justin Jackson because Justin Jackson's going to smash this week. So it sounds like it came from Eckler himself that he is not going to play this week. And then so that leaves the highest price running back, 7,400 Najee Harris. At Kansas City, you've got Fournette on IR with a injury, 7,300, not playing this week. So that leaves Harris as the only guy over 7K, which Kev, you alluded to. There's a lot of cheap running backs this week to play. I mean, just by default, there really is no running back to pay up for. Essentially, you've got Joe Mixon 6,900 at home against Baltimore, in not a good matchup. You've got Alexander Madison, going to fill in for Dalvin Cook at home against the Rams in a high total game, but also not a good matchup. The Rams are good against the run, 6,800. Cordero Patterson, 6,700 at home against Detroit. That's semi-interesting, but he just doesn't really have a ceiling. Saquon Barkley, 6,500 at Philly. Barkley's just kind of not been, a high ceiling guy at all this year. You got DeAndre Swift. If DeAndre Swift plays, how much DeAndre Swift at 6,300 are you going to have against ATL? Because I think I will have a ton myself. Javonte Williams, 6,100 at the Raiders. Josh Jacobs, 6K at home against Denver, and that rounds out everybody over 6K. So, mentioning those guys, Najee Harris is interesting because nobody's going to pay up for running back. My concern with him is he just doesn't really have a ceiling, and we haven't really seen his consistency that we saw the first half of the year take part in this second half. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing with Najee Harris yet, but I do know that nobody's going to pay up for him because everybody's going to pay down. So it makes your build inherently different from the get-go if you were to play Najee Harris. So he's interesting. I'm probably going to be out on Alexander Madison if he's going to end up insanely popular, but if he's not going to be popular, the workload he should get, I mean, he's going to be heavily involved in the pass game, even if they're losing. because you go back to a couple of his starts earlier this year. When they played Seattle, he had 8 targets, and when they played Detroit the first go round in Week 5, he had 7 targets. So he still has a ton of pass catching upside there as the workhorse back. So interested to see where his ownership comes in before I kind of decide whether I'm going to play him or not. Then, like I mentioned, DeAndre Swift, if he plays at 6,300 against Atlanta, I mean, their season's done, right? They have 1 win. So if he plays, you have to think that, he's fully healthy and that they're not really risking him to, further re-injure whatever injury he's got going on, with his shoulder. So if he plays, I'm definitely going to have interest in DeAndre Swift. And then, we didn't even mention James Robinson isn't practicing, but it sounds like that's a minor rest day. And we, pre-show, we were talking about all the running backs that are in good spots. And you and I didn't even mention James Robinson. He's 5,900 against the Jets as the lone guy in the offense. I'm going to play a ton of James Robinson because he is not going to be, as high owned as he should be in this spot with the Q tag and all that. But it sounds like he's just getting regular rest days as they've had throughout the entire season. He's missed a lot of Thursday practices. So I have heavy interest in James Robinson at 5,900 against the New York Jets, who are the absolute worst defense in the NFL and quite possibly the worst defense we've seen in a long, long time. The Miles Sanders injury is one to pay attention to because if he were to miss against the Giants, then that opens up the Boston Scott and Jordan Howards of the world because the Giants are one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. So definitely something to keep an eye on there if Miles Sanders were to be out. But even if he plays, 5,600 at home against the Giants, that is definitely something to be interested in. And I will let you talk about Ronald Jones, and then I'll just finally mention the free square of the week. I will not, and I would not have a single team without Justin Jackson this week. 4,200 for a guy that is going to get the workload that he is going to get against the Houston Texans is not something I'm going to pass up on. He got 13 carries last week and 1 target in a game that Eckler played in. And he has become, the main backup behind Eckler, and he is going to get, it sounds like, the full workload. They don't really trust Joshua Kelly to handle that. He's got, he's fumbled a couple times. Their rookie, Larry Roundtree, he's been inactive, healthy inactive for the last few weeks, pretty much most of the season. So it is going to be the Justin Jackson show against one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. 4,200 is just simply way too cheap for him.
What the hell just happened?
What, did you get knocked down in the standings?
It just updated to drop me down.
How much were you ahead by? Did they stat correct something from that insane last play?
But who could they have given that to?
Well, it goes as negative receiving yards or something, or they somehow get receiving yards, but it's not, they don't get receptions. And then if it was a fumble, somebody gets a credit for a fumble. So there would be minus points on that. I didn't see the play because I was trying to keep this podcast alive.
I'm so confused though, because Debo lost. Oh no, now one back. Now it's updating again.
I would close out of it and let it simmer for a few minutes, and while they try to sift out the actual stats on that last play, because there was a ton of laterals. They threw the ball around 6 or 7 times to a bunch of different guys, so they'll have to sort out how those statistics work in terms of actual stats. But Kev, talk to us on running back real quick as that goes back and forth.
Anyway, all right. That was weird. Okay, I don't know. That's going to be a real kick in the nuts if something like that happened all of a sudden. Anyway, all right. So, I think at running back, I think that, I think you brought up, if you've talked about Ronald Jones at 5,100 at his price tag, right?
I left him there for you to tell us why we shouldn't play Ronald Jones.
I think it's an absolute trap, and if he's going to be chalk because of his price tag, I think it's a massive mistake. Because for Ronald Jones, right? They do not trust him whatsoever at all as a pass catcher, and we saw it last week, right? With him, that even after Leonard Fournette went down, they never trusted him as a pass catcher in that game. They continued to go to Keyshawn Vaughn, who looked absolutely horrendous in that game, looked absolutely terrible, right? And they still did. And then they bring in Le'Veon Bell immediately. And I honestly think there's a chance that they could give Le'Veon Bell that role, that pass catching work, until they get Gio Bernard back. And so I just do not trust that they're going to give him that kind of opportunity to be the lead back, right? And what made Leonard Fournette so great was his ability to soak up a lot of touches through the backfield, or as a pass catcher in that offense. And he was seeing like 7, 8, 9 targets a game. Ronald Jones isn't seeing that. And if he's not going to see the pass catching work, why would I pay $5,100 when there's plenty of quarterbacks or running backs in that $5K range that I think makes sense? I mean, Miles Sanders is only $500 more than he is. Play Miles Sanders in a smash matchup against the Giants. David Montgomery's $5,700. Great matchup against Seattle. Play him. Sony Michel looks like he's the lead back against this excellent. I mean, one of the best matchups against Minnesota at $5,500. Like, I just can't get on board with Ronald Jones, who's $5,100.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think it's a trap. I think he can get benched at any moment. He misses any pass protection or anything. They'll throw Vaughn in there. Or, I wouldn't be shocked if Le'Veon Bell is active this week.
Jesus, this is going to give me a heart attack. Now I'm back up to first. Jeez. All right. Anyway, so that's where I come in on him, right? I just don't think it makes sense. And then looking at the running backs, this feels a lot like last week, right? Where there was a couple high-priced running backs, but I didn't feel great about them. Joe Mixon was one of them. Like, I didn't like Joe Mixon at all in the matchup that he was facing against the Bucs. Najee Harris was up there, I believe, was the other one. Didn't feel comfortable with him. So, the play was paying down in the middle price tier of running backs and not pay these high-priced guys, right? And so, for me, like I think I'm going to do the same thing. Baltimore is still great against the run. They're one of the best run defenses in all of football. I think they're first or second in adjusted line yards to running backs. You just beat them through the air. They're a complete run or pass funnel. And so I can't play Joe Mixon at 69, even though that he is cheaper. And he just doesn't see any pass catching work. They still have not used him as a pass catcher this year, which makes zero sense to me. It's been all on the ground. And so I can't trust that. Alexander Mattison, Dalvin Cook is out. Yeah, sure. But this is a great matchup against the Rams. Rams are middle of the road as a run defense. But I don't think I can trust Alexander Mattison in this spot. So I don't want to play him. Najee Harris, like I already talked about. Kansas City has been, and like we saw last week, and people will look back at how Kansas City struggled against the Chargers, right? In that game. And so in that game against the Chargers, but that was because Chris Jones was out. Chris Jones isn't out this week, right? Chris Jones is back. They're getting a lot of their defensive pieces back. They will be without Nick Bolton, possibly, which could be a problem. And getting Willie Gay back is a big upgrade for them. But so I just don't love Najee Harris at 7,400. And so once you start going down in the running back, James Robinson, great matchup once again at 5,900. He's still incredibly too cheap. I think he handled like all of the touches in that backfield, right? At 59, and he's still only 5,900
against the Jets.
Yeah, against the Jets, which is, the worst run defense in the league. They have been.
He had 18 carries and 6 targets last week. 24 opportunities, and now he gets that against the Jets.
Yes, and we're not worried that the Jets are running away with this game and taking this from them. That's not going to happen. And so for me, I just think that, but he's probably also going to be really chalky, which I would expect because it's a matchup against the Jets. But sometimes it's not a bad idea just to eat the chalk and go with somebody like James Robinson at 5,900. That's what I did last week. It was in too great of a spot for him to really fail. And then the other one, I think, is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's right below him is a good leverage off of James Robinson if you don't want to go there. because the Steelers have been fucking terrible against the run. The last 5 weeks, they were allowing 6 yards per carry. 6 yards per carry. They allowed Deonta Foreman to go over 100 on him. You know, I mean, they are just terrible against the run. Now, the big question is, will the Chiefs commit to running the ball? Now, if they don't have Kelsey and they don't have Tyreek, I don't think they're going to have a choice, but to be a little bit more conservative and go with something like that, right? So, I think I think this middle tier running back, I guess what I'm saying is where I'm going to live. The starting probably with. I can't play Saquon. I'm not playing him, but I do like Cordell Patterson. I mean, you have to love Cordell Patterson at 6,700. I think that's where I start with the running backs that I would want to play against Detroit. Then from there, I think for him, I think James Robinson, I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Javonte Williams at 6,100. Now, Javonte is another interesting guy too, because last week he handled 59% of the snaps and 45% of the passing routes to Melvin Gordon, who only played 41% of the snaps and only 24% of the passing routes. Now, that could have been a 1 week sample size, but they're at a spot now. They're probably out of the playoffs. Why not see and just commit fully to Javonte Williams at this point? There's no point in to continue just to run Melvin Gordon every week. So I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to happen. And the Raiders have been terrible. They've allowed the 4th most DK points to running backs. So I like Javonte as well at 6,100. And I don't think he will carry the ownership because the running backs he is currently crunched in between.
Yeah. If Swift plays, are you playing him?
He is risky. I think that he's not a bad play because I don't think he's going to have much ownership. But as it is a matchup against Atlanta, they do have, it sounds like Jamal Williams could be back. They have Craig Riddles, who has been handling the rock. I don't think he's going away. But it's hard to pass up on him at $6,300, right? Considering the last time he was played, he was up in the 7K range, upper sixes. This is pretty cheap for him.
Yeah, and kind of my point on Swift was, with being a 1-win Lions team, right? Like, if you're playing Swift, he's fully healthy, right? Like, you're not going to risk re-injuring Swift, his shoulder even more if, when you only have 1 win. So definitely like him. Is there any other running backs you want to hit on, or you want to just go ahead and move to wide receiver?
I think other than that, I'm sure you waxed poetically about Justin Jackson. Just smashed him in free square.
Yes, he's a free square. Yeah.
The only concern I would have, I guess, from a devil's advocate perspective, is maybe they don't give him all the run. That you see Joshua Kelly, maybe even split carries and split touches, and maybe he doesn't see the pass catching work that we think he could, because they're playing the Texans and they don't have to throw the ball as much. That would be the only concern with him, I think, is that while yes, and even if you look at him last week, he played like 50, almost 60% of the snaps last week with Eckler healthy. So I'm not expecting it. I'm not, but I'm saying just as a devil's advocate, I think there is a chance that that he ends up just splitting touches with Joshua Kelly, and maybe he doesn't get there.
My counter argument is he's $4,200,
right,
and he can score his 10.9 he scored last week with Eckler active. And so, like, let's say Kelly were to somehow get the Eckler role that Eckler had last week. Jackson still scored 11 points with Eckler playing. And that 11 points at $4,200 isn't going to kill you, especially because everybody's going to play him. Now, if he goes out and scores, 24 points, which he's absolutely capable of, he can score multiple touchdowns against Houston. And go for 100 rushing yards. That is not out of the question at all. And if you don't play him, you're pretty much dead in the water because he's only 4,200, and pretty much everybody's going to play him, especially in the lower number of entrant tournaments. I mean, if you're going to play in the Millie Maker, I mean, there is sense to fade him because he is going to be so popular. You're just at that point, you would just be hoping for. I hate to say hoping for an injury, but I mean, at that point, you would be just praying that somehow game theory works in your favor and that somehow the 60% on whatever he's going to get up to, Justin Jackson, would not work out in a tournament of that size. But in small field stuff, just play him and move on, and don't overthink it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it, and I think you make a lot of good points there with that, with him. I wouldn't mind just a little bit of leverage, but if you play a ton of lineups, just playing some Joshua Kelly as leverage off of Justin Jackson, right? Because they're both in the same spot, they're both in the same matchup, right? And so I think those would be the things that I would look at that with it. That maybe if you're playing in a lot of, if you're different, right? Because you're only playing one or two lineups, so you're not going to do that. But for the people that are max entering or playing a ton of different lines, I think it does make a lot of sense, right? To have a little bit of leverage, go with like a Joshua Kelly off of Justin Jackson,
Definitely.
and who's cheaper, right? I think Kelly is 4K, and so not that it matters. 400, 4,200 is not. It doesn't really fucking matter. But yeah. I don't hate doing that either. D-Bro, you love to fucking see it. Yeah, you do. You do love to see it. People that are just joining us missed it. We had a live sweat on the DGen pod.
The pod went off the rails. Matty D has taken over the hosting for tonight because Kev is just non-existent.
I have to be honest with you, I have not been. I have like the last 30 minutes of this show, the last 20 minutes of the show, I have been useless. So I apologize, but when you are live sweating and you hit, and then all of a sudden you recheck it, and all of a sudden you drop down to 20th out of nowhere, and you're like, what? The game's over with? How did this just happen? Right? And then it came back. So thankfully, it came back, and I'm back in first. So, with that crazy last play that they had.
Yeah.
So hopefully it sticks. We have nothing else to change.
Yeah, you just want to see that notification.
Yes, that's what I'm waiting for now. That's
the
next step.
Congratulations!
I fear that's going to be. I fear that's going to be 2 or 3 hours from now. Because it takes some time.
It will.
But regardless of that, you had a live sweat on the show. So D-Bro, I don't know if you were in here for it, but it was something, and I appreciate Maddie for holding it down.
You know what's funny and ironic is, I was reaching out to you before we hopped on and was like, hey, just making sure, nothing popped up. You're still good to go for this. And you were like, yeah, we're good unless you want to do the pod solo this week on Saturday. And I was like, no, I don't want to do it solo. And yet here we are. I'm still doing it solo. Well, no, it's all good, man.
And I'll say it's been a rough year for me. Playing.
It has for me too. I mean, I had a big week last week that pretty much brought me back to break even and then ahead a little bit on the year. So it's these last couple of weeks have finally, both you and I have turned it around. So it's good to get in the green, and your win has definitely, I'm sure, taken you out of the hole and then brought you severely into the green.
Absolutely.
But a nice little 4K hit into first place.
This is why you play. I mean, this is why I play GPPs.
That's exactly right. One tournament win makes you can lose the other 16, 17 weeks. If you win one tournament, it covers your whole season.
Right. And so and it's funny too, because two things. One, a few weeks ago, I was just talking about like, man, I just need to take a break, back away from this.
Yep. And you said last night in our chat that you were not playing.
Yes, and I said I'm not playing. I'm saying this now. I'm not playing tomorrow. Yep. I'm not playing. And this is what happens. And I played, and I almost forgot because I actually went Christmas shopping with my son, get something for my for the missus, and so we were running around. It was like 5:30. I was like, oh shit, I need to reserve some lineups. I'm gonna play tonight, and so I went ahead and reserved some lineups real quick. And then I was standing at Chipotle buying dinner for us as I'm just building these lineups, really, building my lineups and everything else. And
dude, maybe you should build your main slate lineups like that. Just go, like, whatever your first thing that comes to mind. Like, don't overthink it. Maybe you're overanalyzing stuff, and just go with the flow. And I'm sure you looked at ownerships and saw AJ Brown was going to be under owned, and we're like, screw it, let me captain him. And you played Ayuk, who was not high owned. He was 27% in your contest. The great leverage off of George Kittle, who was insanely popular and did absolutely nothing. So you got to that, and you had a unique build, and that's what we talk about, every single week in here. It's like, don't just play something different to be different. Play something different that has a ceiling. And your AJ Brown, whatever he was, 7-8% captain, that has a ceiling. Your Brandon Ayuk, 25% owned in the flex, that has a ceiling. And so you made great roster construction choices there, and it ended up paying off. So definitely happy for you. That's awesome. Now you have to decide whether you're going to tell the missus, because I'm sure she will expect to see a cut of that.
I definitely got to buy an AJ Brown jersey. I know that for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I expect you to be on the pod next week in an AJ Brown jersey.
Yeah, it's going to happen. We're going to buy an AJ Brown jersey. So, anyways, I think other than that, I think that pretty much covers the running backs. Like I said, I am living and dying in the 5K range. And we're just going to have to also just kind of be, it's not quite like NBA, but we're going to have to be a little bit like NBA and be fluid and, change up our who we want to play in our player pools with all this COVID stuff. Because I do not think we're done with the players that are going to be ruled out with COVID this week.
Yeah,
I would expect a little bit more tomorrow on Friday as well. So, let's see. Sorry, boys. I'm very late tonight by Walito. Thank you for the super chat. I hope you accept these $20 as an apology. Sincerely, Walito. Also, thank you, Batty, for making me play Huntley 1 over 3K because of my Huntley, Andrews, Cook, Gabe Davis lineup. Let's go,
Walito.
We're all just winning money. Walito,
right.
I don't know if you missed it. I don't know if you just joined, but I took down the Showdown Slate. Won about 4K there. So, hey, we're all winning money. Merry Christmas to us all.
Yes, sir. Walito, I played that same Huntley Andrews Cook stack. We talked about it on the pod last week, and that was definitely one that won us a ton of money last week. So good to see that Walito had a big week last week as well.
Yeah, things you love to see. So
things are turning around here at the DJ Nation pod.
Yeah, now let's all win money. Let's put together this lineup here in a little bit, and hopefully it just takes something down. We all win. So, anyways, let's jump over to wide receiver. We got Cooper Kupp at the top at 9,100. Tyreek Hill at 8,400, who is also on COVID. So I don't know if he, it very well may not play. Justin Jefferson 8,100. Keenan Allen at 77. Stephon Diggs at 76. Deontay at 75. Jamar Chase at 7,100. Mike Evans, who is questionable at 7K. Adam Thielen, who says he's going to be back, but I don't know. We'll see him play in that game. That I just don't know. 6,900, like he did not look good pregame for was it Monday night whenever they played, or was it Sunday night? Either way, he did not. He looked not good. So, but he says he's going to try to play this week. Hunter Renfro is 6,800. Tyler Lockett has been activated and is returning 6,700. DK Metcalf 6,400. T Higgins at 6,200. Mike Williams at 6,100, and then Devontae Smith at 6K. Maddie, what do we start with? Let's start with this. Cooper Kupp, he's on the main slate again. He's 9,100. There is a real case to be made that is still too cheap for him for what he brings to the table. He is absolutely crushing the field this year. Every week, he is dropping monster numbers. 37 this past week, 34, 29. Now, he did have 18.6 against Green Bay, and then 26.2, 20.5, 47, 27.5, 40.6, 37. Like, how do you not play?
He only has one game below 10 targets and only 4 games below 25 fantasy points. On this slate, when we have the low dollar running backs, and every week we have low dollar quarterbacks that we can play, on this slate specifically, though, I will not have a team without Cooper Kupp. He's too integral to what that offense is doing. You can run the ball on Minnesota, so maybe that does take a little bit of the air out of the ball from Stafford's perspective. And the fact that they did combine, like both Henderson and Michelle got a ton of work last week. That was not something that we were accustomed to seeing with McVay, right? Usually he leans on just one guy. So, if they are able to have success running the ball early, then I guess you could see them just run the ball over and over again. But I mean, that's not in McVay's DNA either. Stafford is at the top of the league in pass rate, especially when they get in close to the goal line. So it's like, when you play Cooper Kupp, you're pretty much getting goal line carries at that point. So, I mean, he's got a ton of games with 2 touchdowns. I think he's got, 4 or 5 2-touchdown games this year, which is crazy. So yeah, 9,100. I mean, he's pretty much a lock for 20 plus fantasy points. And like we said on this slate, it's low scoring, low totals across the board for the most part. You're looking for locked in floor ceiling combos again. And Cooper Kupp he's the Devontae Adams play of last week. And like Devontae Adams didn't get you there. He only got 16 points last week. He was still on optimal teams at only being, with 16 points at 8,600 or whatever he was, because of how low scoring the slate was across the board. And I think we have a similar makeup here with this slate and how it shakes out. I just don't see another wide receiver, frankly, that has Cooper Kupp's upside. I mean, I guess you could sell me on Justin Jefferson against the Rams on the other side, considering that Rams defense has not been that good this year against the pass. But I would want Thielen to be in before I play Justin Jefferson, because we saw Jefferson against the Bears. The Bears double teamed him, and I wouldn't be shocked if the Rams do the same thing, because the Vikings pretty much have nobody else if Thielen's not on the field. So I'm going to get to Cooper Kupp and make him a priority this week, and then just kind of figure out the rest, especially with, like I said, the cheap running backs we have. It makes it too easy to get up to Kupp this week. So I'll let you kind of talk about these other top end guys. I just want to mention one guy that's up here, and that's Jamar Chase at 7,100. And I mentioned, that I'm probably not going to play Burrow myself, because Burrow only has one game over 25 fantasy points this year, and that was the outbreak against Baltimore. So, Burrow can still have a really good game and takes only one guy with him, and that could be Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, are the two guys that I have interest in. But you can get all your Burrow exposure by just playing one of these two wide receivers. And Jamar Chase, we know that he's as big of boomer bust as it gets. I mean, he can legit score 4 fantasy points, and he can legit score 40. So this is such a good matchup for Chase. Chase is the downfield target for Burrow. And this Baltimore defense with no corners is still playing the same style of defense every single week. And that's they pressure the quarterback, and they leave their cornerbacks on islands out on the outside. We saw MVS for the Packers tear them up because of this last week. So they were double teaming Adams and leaving everybody else, kind of out there to roam. But I don't think they're going to double team Jamar Chase. I don't think he deserves that kind of Devontae Adams respect just yet, because considering he's a rookie. And they have T. Higgins on the other side, who they have to respect. And they have Tyler Boyd in the slot, who they have to respect. So I'm not expecting this Baltimore team to just come out and just say, let's take away Jamar Chase like we tried to take away Devontae Adams. So I think 7,100 for Chase is a good price for his upside. He absolutely can still burn you, but his upside is something that I'm going to chase this week. Monroe St. Brown is one other guy that I wanted to talk about, because his volume is absolutely absurd. And he's got 12, 12, and 11 targets in the last 3 weeks. And, something that I was kind of thinking about is this volume spike has correlated with DeAndre Swift being out. After, Swift got hurt in that Thanksgiving game against Chicago. And that's when the next 3 games, we've seen this double-digit target spike for St. Brown. And so if Swift is back, then I'm going to be off him, I think. But if he's out again, St. Brown has just kind of been Goff's safety blanket, which we have not seen those targets that were going to Swift go to these other running backs. They've gone to Amon-Ra. So I definitely like him at 5,600 against Atlanta. I think that's too cheap for his volume. And then one other guy, I am very curious to see where this ownership comes in. Antonio Brown is $4,900 and could quite possibly be the only wide receiver that Tom Brady trusts on that field. We could legit see Brown get 12 to 15 targets if Mike Evans doesn't play. Chris Godwin's already on IR. This could end up being the Brown and Gronk show for Tom Brady. So I'm curious to see where his ownership is going to end up. Maybe people don't play him because of the Q tag and he's coming back off a multi-week injury. But just like we saw with AJ Brown tonight, right? If guys are, deemed, they look good to go, they're going to get their full workload. You play these talented guys. We saw the same thing with Dalvin Cook 2 weeks ago against Pittsburgh, ran for 200 yards, coming back off an injury as well. So the reports from the beat writers in Tampa Bay are that Antonio Brown looks like his pre-injury self. And if that's the case, that's scary. For $4,900, I mean, like I said, he legit could get 12 to 15 targets here, because Tom Brady is just not going to throw the ball to anybody else pretty much other than Gronk, with Fournette, Godwin, and Mike Evans possibly all 3 missing this game. So those are the main guys that I wanted to hit on, and I will let you take over the wide receivers from here.
So speaking of cheap wide receivers, I mean, one, there is some really incredible cheap wide receivers this week too, that I think they're going to be out there. But One, I totally agree on the Jamar Chase side of things at 7,100. Like I said, the Ravens allow the most plays of 20 plus yards on the season, and it's not even close. It's like them and the Jets, and then there's a big drop off. They've continually just been burned deep this year, and that is Jamar Chase's MO. And this very well could be a real prime spot for a bounce back for him. And so, I coming off that 1.3, people got a bad taste in their mouth. Not want to play him. 7,100, I think he's cheap enough where he has a true, really high ceiling. So I do like playing him as well. I completely agree with that one. You want to talk about somebody else who's seeing a ton of targets, and that is, I guess, outside of really last week, but Hunter Renfro, he is seeing a ton of targets. He's only 6,800. But man, that seems a little bit too high for him at that price tag. Especially,
I think so too. I'll let you talk about why, but I mean, he struggled against Cleveland just this past week. He only got 6 points, and Cleveland he got the double team treatment that we've seen Devontae Adams and Justin Jefferson getting, and it's because with no Darren Waller out there, the Raiders, and no Henry Ruggs, the Raiders have literally nobody else, and defenses are starting to say to these teams that have one guy and nobody else, let's double team this guy and make everybody else beat us. And so it's taking away the ceiling games from these studs.
No, for sure. And but I just don't think he has a high enough ceiling to hit 6,800, right? And so if he was in the 5K range, I think, yeah, sure, for sure, right? The most we've seen him score is 32.7. I mean, that was off 13 receptions, 117 yards, and a score against Kansas City, and that was in a shootout. Or not a shootout, but that was a game that they were trailing the entire time and had to throw the ball no matter what. I don't think you can say the same when they're playing against Denver. And so
yeah,
I just can't get to that. But down here in this range of wide receivers that you were talking about, the thing with Monroe St Brown too that I will also mention is that they don't have Jared Goff. Or likely
I didn't realize that he was on.
And
COVID.
so, not even that.
If he's out, then I don't want to play him.
I don't think there's a huge difference between Tim Boyle and Jared Goff. To be honest, I don't think there's some huge gap between the two of them. But
probably not. But
the problem is that putting a different quarterback out there, I don't know who he's going to target. Right?
Exactly.
Him and Monroe St Brown have a rapport.
Mm-hmm. And you can see the ownership get high too because of the 3 straight double-digit target games.
For sure, with the
right?
And he's still cheap. He's not that expensive. I mean, 5,600 is not crazy.
Yep.
Right. But I just can't do it with so many different factors. And like I said, if DeAndre Swift comes back, I think that's a really sharp point of one of the reasons why he was seeing so many an elevated target share that he was. He's not seeing any deep balls so fucking ever. His yards per reception is 9.2, which is 100th. 6.9 yard per target, which is 86th. He's seeing a 20% market share of the air yards, which is 61st among all wide receivers, and his air yards on the season is 61st. It's been all short underneath stuff, right? Which is something that we were seeing with DeAndre Swift.
And his touchdown last week was just blown coverage by Arizona. I mean, he was wide open, and 2 linebackers they got mixed up on who was going to trade and trail him because he was lined up pretty much as a tight end on that route. So it was pretty much blown coverage is really the only reason he had a deep touchdown. But if you take away that play that is not really in his repertoire, I mean, he has a very pedestrian week last week, and we're probably not even talking about him.
Right. And so who I do like, I like Darnell Mooney at 5,400. He continues to see a very solid target share every single week. 25% of that team's targets, on the road against Seattle. Justin Fields looks like he continued to get better now. I think Justin Fields is a little banged up, but it sounds like he should be okay and he should play in this game. Allen Robinson, which I would have actually had some interest in playing at 4K just because I'm sick, but he has still not come off the COVID list. And so, if he doesn't make it back, I think that's even if he's back, Darnell Mooney is still 100% in play. But Darnell Mooney, I think, is a pretty sharp play at 5,400, and I think he could end up being leverage off of what Monroe St Brown or even Antonio Brown could be, because he's kind of in that middle tier between those two guys, right? When it comes to Antonio Brown, I don't mind him, and I am going to be really interested to see what his ownership is going to come in at, because there's been reports this week that he's going to play limited snaps, 30% of the snaps, I think is what they've talked about, or not 30%, 30 to 35 snaps not 30 to 35%, which in my eyes isn't really that big of a deal. That probably means he's probably playing 70% of the snaps, somewhere around there.
Of the passing snaps, yeah.
Yes, right. And at the end of the day, that really doesn't matter. I mean, that's what I was getting to, is that, like, if they throw the ball 40 times, I mean, so okay, he's probably playing every passing down snap, so he's going to play end up, which doesn't really matter at that point. And so, to me, it's a complete 100% ownership play.
Yeah.
If his ownership's going to be 45%, 50%, something ridiculous, I'll be out on that, or I'll be much lower to the field.
If it's that ridiculous, I'm probably just going to play Gronk instead. I don't know that I'll play both, and I may just end up playing Gronk anyways, especially if AB gets popular.
Because that's what I'm also curious about with Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is 4,700, and no Cole Beasley. Cole Beasley's out no matter what. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. He's unvaccinated. And he's only 4,700. We've seen him now in back-to-back weeks put up some pretty strong performances. He was one of the best wide receivers last week at only $3,700, which is somebody that we talked about a lot. But he's seen 15 targets over the last 2 weeks. He has scored a touchdown in 3 straight games. Like, he's trending in that direction, right? And he's still only $4,700. If he's going to be high on, I won't have him. But if he's not, and people are going to ignore him because it's against the Patriots, people are nervous about, again, kind of what happened the last time, and he's going to come on and under-owned, I will slam in Gabe Davis all day at 4,700. Because they're going to have to throw the ball to somebody, and I don't think he's going to see a ton of J.C. Jackson. I think you end up seeing a lot of Stephon Diggs on him, right? Which I think will just open things up for Gabe Davis. And it's going to be a little more consolidated of a target share, because I think you could also then go to Dawson Knox. See a lot more short and intermediate route stuff that Cole Beasley would have typically have saw. I don't think he sees that now. I think that would probably go to a little bit more towards Dawson Knox. But so those are the guys that I really wanted to talk about. But we cannot not talk about the Chiefs.
We buried the lead. We buried the lead.
Yes. So that we have the Chiefs situation.
They have, by the way, they have the second highest total on the slate behind the Chargers. So Vegas still thinks the Chiefs are going to score a ton of points, possibly without Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill.
Yes, and you have McColl at 3,500. You have Byron Pringle at 3,300, I believe, in that game, right?
Josh Gordon, 3,100. DeMarcus Robinson's down there. I mean, one or two of these Chiefs receivers can get there, absolutely. Not even a question. And they are free squares.
Yeah, so Josh Gordon's 3,100. DeMarcus Robinson is 3K. Pringle's 33, and then Hardman's at 35. And I think, now I could be wrong, but I think that McCole Hardman is going to have the most ownership of these wide receivers.
Probably.
Big mistake. Big time. We've talked about this in our chat earlier in the week. Mm-hmm. I think it's a big mistake. I think it's Byron Pringle is the absolute smash play here at $3,300. He has the rapport with Patrick Mahomes. They trust him in high leverage situations. We've seen in very small sample size without Tyreek him be able to produce, and they do not trust McCole Hardman, and they do not at all. He has not played more than 35% of the snaps really since Josh Gordon has been there. They don't trust him. They don't allow him to do a whole lot. He might see some short. He'll probably see some short stuff. Some short, crossers and stuff like that. They'll let him do those sorts of things. But overall, you're not going to see some, 10 targets for McCole Hardman, or I don't think it's nearly as likely. I think it's Byron Pringle, and I think Josh Gordon feels a little thin at 3,100.
Yeah.
I know Pat Mahomes talked him up and said he has a lot of confidence in him this week. And, I've been, in one of our chats with D-Bro and the boys, I've been making jokes about Josh Gordon. But at the end of the day, like, if I'm playing a bunch of lineups, I don't mind having a little bit of exposure to Josh Gordon because, he could go 4 for 40 and a touchdown and at 3,100 to get you there,
Yeah.
Because they have to throw the ball to somebody. But to me, it's Byron Pringle. And then I think I would probably go Hardman just because I could see him getting some of those short and intermediate stuff, some of the stuff that Tyreek does, and then followed up by Josh Gordon. But it's Byron Pringle than everybody else at wide receiver. Okay,
I'm going to flag plant this week. Byron Pringle is the guy. Like I dropped in the chat yesterday when we were talking about it. The one game there was 4 games in 2019 where Tyreek missed. And Kelce actually played in those. And then there was one of those 4 games where Sammy Watkins was also out. and Pringle filled in for Watkins because Watkins was pretty much taking over the alpha role while Tyreek was out. But the game that Watkins missed as well, Pringle had eight targets, 6 catches, 103 yards, and a touchdown. And we've seen this year too, Pringle's got 3 double-digit games with Tyreek and Kelsey playing already as it is. So there is no risk at 3K playing a guy who can get you, 8 points, even if it doesn't work out for you. And he's got a 25-point upside. Like, he legit has 6 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown, which gets you to 25 points at 3K. I will be playing Byron Pringle this week. Absolutely.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And then the other situation would be if Mike Evans misses. So then you have the Bucs game where you're only going to have Antonio Brown, which then that really, I think it would be obviously Tyler Johnson, right? And then it's going to come down to, I don't know what they're going to do with Rashad Perriman. Has he cleared COVID yet?
I don't know, but I'm probably just going to play Gronk, to be honest. I mean, Gronk is literally Mark Andrews leading up to what Mark Andrews, his explosions. I think Gronk is doing the same thing that Mark Andrews was doing before he exploded. If you look at, this is a good segue into tight ends too. If you look at Gronk's game logs over the last 5, 8, 9, 8, 9, 11 targets, and those 11 targets last week against New Orleans obviously come with all those receivers getting hurt. And that is Gronk's first double-digit target game of the season. And he has 3 games this year where he caught double-digit touchdowns. Or I'm sorry, double touchdowns, where he caught 2 touchdowns. He has 0 games where he caught only 1 touchdown, but he has 3 games where he caught 2 touchdowns. So the Gronk games do come in bunches. And, we even saw one week, week 12 against Indy, he scored 22 DraftKings points without finding the end zone. He legit has the Mark Andrews upside we saw last 2 weeks. Gronk has that this week, considering all of these guys are going to be out.
Yeah.
And I guess all of that to say is you could legit see Gronk get, 10 to 12 targets. You could see the running back split 5 to 6 targets themselves. You could see Antonio Brown get 8 targets. What's that? We're already up to 25 pass attempts. Tyler Johnson, Scotty Miller, and whoever else mixes in. I mean, you're only looking at, an extra 8 to 10 targets that are left for those guys. Maybe 15 in a high volume game, but I'm not necessarily sure that, Brady throws for 45 to 50 attempts here against Carolina and what's, probably projecting to be a very slow paced game, especially with Carolina on the other side, just running the ball over and over and over again. So honestly, I think the Bucs receivers are more of a trap than the Chiefs guys are.
Yeah, because they have enough. I mean, with AB and Gronk, to be able to get there. Because I was looking, Perriman's still on the COVID list, but he's 4,200. I can't do that. I thought he was going to be like 3K.
Yeah,
I don't know how that happened. But regardless, because they played what, Monday? Yeah, they played Monday night game, right? Or was it Sunday night?
No, it was Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday night. They played Sunday night. Yeah, it was Sunday. But even still, I mean, usually. Pricing usually comes out at halftime during Sunday night games usually. But anyways, regardless of that, 4,200 for Rashad Perriman, no thanks. But Tyler Johnson is 3,900. Scotty Miller is 3,600. So if I would look at it like this, if Perriman doesn't clear, I think that you would see Tyler Johnson likely play the outside more, similar to a Mike Evans type of role there, and then you would see AB slide into the slot and play that Chris Godwin slot role. And then I guess you'd probably have Scotty Miller on the other side.
Miller does not play the slot.
Yeah. And
he's an outside.
Those would be the wide receivers that you would end up having there. I don't mind taking some shots on them, but I wouldn't be overweight to the field. I think Tyler Johnson would end up being the guy, I think, in my opinion, that people would gravitate towards between all of them. Just because we've kind of seen it this year. He's had a few games this year, some pop-up games where he's kind of been there. But overall, I don't think I would have a heavy exposure, especially whenever you can go down cheaper than that and play the Chiefs guys who there's got to be nobody there. I mean, if Kelsey and Hill do not come back, there is nobody there that stands out. That's just an obvious, like, okay, they're going to feed the ball here, right? Like there is nobody. That's going to take that away from him. And I guess let's go ahead and jump over to tight end because that leads us into the other option that we have, who is also mint price as a tight end. So you have Travis Kelce, obviously on COVID, 7,300. Mark Andrews at 7K. I mean, he might be worth all of. Well, not he might. He is worth all of that with what he's been able to do lately. Rob Gronkowski, 6,200, which you just talked about. Darren Waller, who is 6,200, who's still not practiced. He may be done for the year. I don't know why they don't just send him 6K. Kyle Pitts is 5,800. Dawson Knox, we've talked about, is 5,300. Dallas Goedert is 5,100. Hunter Henry is 4,700. Noah Fant, 4,400. Patty Fry, who has he cleared? No, he hasn't practiced. I don't think he's going to be back this week. I don't think he's going to be able to clear concussion protocol. This is like his second concussion in a month. Yeah. I would be shocked. Like at this point, you might just think about not letting him come back, at least putting him on injured reserve to be able to get right. Because 2 concussions in a month is not something you want to see. This one's definitely going to take him a lot longer to come back from. And then you have Conklin at 3,900, $3,700 Gerald Everett. Monroe, who got more involved this past week, is 3,600. Jared Cook's 3,500. The guy I want to talk that I want to hit on is. Oh, I just now noticed. Do you know who got activated today? Who got designated for return?
Brevin Jordan?
No.
Dan Arnold?
Let's go! $2,900 Dan Arnold against the Jets. If he gets activated, he was designated for return today. So that would just be the icing on the cake there for that situation, right? Anyways, so talk to us about tight ends. I know you already talked about Gronk. It sounds like that's going to be the main guy you're going to have. The guy that I was going to talk about is Noah Gray. Noah Gray is 2,500. He is the bare minimum. He's going to be the only guy. Blake Bell's also on COVID. They don't have literally any other tight ends. I think on the practice squad, I think they had like Ross Travis or something like that, who's absolutely nobody. They spent a 5th-round pick on Noah Gray. There was a lot of hype talking about him coming out in preseason and during training camp and during camp. I remember Kelsey talking a lot about Noah Gray, how impressed he was with him. And that, he talked about, Noah Gray looks better than I did when I was coming, in my first rookie mini camp or training camp and all that stuff. Looks more advanced than where I was at. That's all player speak. Who cares about that? But he's literally going to be the only guy. He's going to be the tight end, right? And we know how much Patrick Mahomes looks for, the tight end. And so Noah Gray at 2,500, like, it's going to be hard to get away from. And I honestly don't mind double stacking tight end this week. Going with a Noah Gray at $2,500, getting exposure to that Chiefs defense and the flex, and then playing like a Mark Andrews or Gronk, in the flex or at the tight end spot. Like, I don't think it's a crazy thing to do. There's not a, it may not be necessary this week because of the pay up spots at running back. There really isn't anyone to pay minimum, but if you wanted to do like a Kupp and Jefferson type of stack, or even if it's a mini stack and you're not wanting to play the quarterbacks there, I think that's fine that you could do that. But so I don't mind doing that. But Noah Gray at $2,500, who very well could see 8 to 10 targets here, is very hard to pass up on. Noah Gray is a good athlete too. We're not talking about some dad runner out there. Like, he's a decent athlete out there as well. And so if he's going to be the guy, because like I said, no Blake Bell, he's out. So as well, they're both on COVID, Kelsey and him. If they're both out, it's going to be Noah Gray. He's going to play 100% of the snaps. He's going to see targets.
Yeah, I mean, the slate just gets to the point where it's like how many value guys are too many in your lineup, right? Which is very interesting because
I think maybe it is just picking your spot, and not loading up on all these guys and just picking a spot here, maybe one of them or two of them, and then letting the rest fall as it may. And I think that could get you to be different because at the end of the day, what is probably going to end up happening, though, is we're going to see guys like Cooper Kupp have elevated probably ownership because of the fact that you can fit in all these cheap guys.
Yep. No, I definitely agree. I'm planning my flag again. Last week it was Mark Andrews. I'm seeing all the same things with Gronk that I saw with Andrews before the Andrews explosion. It's coming. The Gronk 25, 30, 35 point game is coming. And it just very well might be this week against Carolina. So I'm going to be on board before that actually happens because I think, Andrews is going to be popular with what he's been doing. And he's got two back-to-back games over 30 points. and he's got a 44-point game trickled in there earlier this year. But I mean, being at 7K at the tight end position. Now, granted, I will say if you can build a lineup, where you feel good about all your values and you can get to Andrews, I'm not saying don't play Andrews, especially, if you're running it back with Jamar Chase on the other side, then Andrews makes a ton of sense as a correlation there as a mini stack. Love the Chase Andrews mini stack idea. So definitely wouldn't just not play Andrews just because. But I think he may be a little more popular than what his price tag he should be popular. Then if I'm going to get Gronk, basically if I'm going to get Gronk at lower ownership and $800 less in a game where Gronk's going to be the alpha and see double-digit targets, I'm pretty much going to play that 100 times out of 100, regardless of whether it works out or not for me on this one slate. But that's just kind of where I'm at. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do with the Chiefs tight end yet. Gray, I don't know if I'm going to play him or not. I haven't decided. I guess I'm just going to have to see where my build takes me, kind of like you were saying, and just see, where everything fits in and where you feel the best about your values. Because, I mean, if I'm playing Justin Jackson and Byron Pringle, I don't necessarily need, Noah Gray at tight end. I can probably fit in Gronk pretty easily with that kind of build, especially if I'm paying down at QB as well. So, and then obviously we punt defense too, right? So all of a sudden we've got 4 positions where we're paying min price for guys, and you got to spend the salary somewhere, and it's,
Yeah, and if you look at it too, I'll say this: at least with Mark Andrews, I mean, the Bengals have struggled in terms of stopping opposing tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
They allow the 6th most receiving yards to tight ends, and they allow the 7th most DK points to the position on the season.
And he's had success against them over the last couple of years too. Like he's had games where he's caught 2 touchdowns. He's had games, where he's gone for 99 yards. I don't think he's eclipsed 100 yards against them. But like I mentioned last week too, with talking about Mark Andrews, this Huntley guy, if Lamar Jackson's out again, Huntley just targets Andrews over and over and over again. He does not care. That game that Huntley filled in against Chicago, Andrews had 10 targets. The Week 14 game against Cleveland, Andrews had 11 targets. The Week 15 game against Green Bay, Andrews had 13 targets. So we've seen 3 straight double-digit target games with Huntley starting. So if Lamar is in, I'm probably, as weird as that sounds, I'm probably going to be off Andrews. But if Huntley's starting, I am more likely to play Andrews just because he has shown a willingness to just chuck it to Andrews no matter where he is on the field. Like, that's his guy.
You're going to get, if Huntley plays again this week and he plays really well and he could get the win against the Bengals, you're going to start hearing people talk about that the Ravens should bench Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
Which it's coming because he has played incredibly well in every game. He's brought them back in all 3 games I think that he's played in. They've trailed in. He's brought them back. I think he's won 2 of them, I believe. Lost and almost damn sure. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if they went to overtime. Maybe I guess it probably would have went down to who won the coin toss there. But I mean, I love the move. The fact that they decided to just go for it there and try to get the win.
Oh, that's the move, 100%.
Yes, yeah. And so, but Huntley has played really, really well. Like there's no denying that he's looked good as a passer. He's obviously athletic and run. But anyways, I digress. We don't have time to go through all that. But I do agree. I do like the Gronk call at 6,200. I think he could be nice leverage off of Mark Andrews because I think Mark Andrews is going to be pretty highly owned, especially over the last 2 30 burgers he's dropped over the last 2 weeks. So people are just going to be chasing that. But I do like Dawson Knox. I talked about that, especially without Cole Beasley at 5,300. If you want to pay down a little bit more to him, I think him and Goddard make a lot of sense at their price tags. Cole Kmet is kind of interesting. He saw 9 targets this past week against Seattle. He's only 3,300. It's just a little bit tougher to trust. But, if Seattle can build a little bit of lead here and really force the Chicago Bears to throw the ball, I think Cole Kmet makes a little bit of sense at 5,300 or 3,300. And boy, oh boy, if Daniel Arnold gets activated for this game, I might have a little interest in Dan Arnold at 2,900. But I probably wouldn't. I probably would just go ahead and just pay down for the final $2,500 for Noah Gray. But I'm also going to be interested to see really where his ownership comes in if Kelsey ends up missing. Because we also have to remember, I guess, too, with the COVID and everything situation, that they've changed the protocols. And so all these guys are in the new protocols, and they only need 1 test. You don't need back-to-back tests anymore. You only need 1 negative test, and you're cleared. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump over to tight. I think that's about enough of tight end. I think those are kind of the guys. Unless there's someone else you really wanted to hit on.
I was just going to say, One thing that, I didn't kind of really think through as we kind of talked through, wide receivers, and we probably should have. If Freiermuth is out, I know he doesn't get a ton of targets. I mean, he's only 4-3, 4-4 over the last 4 weeks, but I mean, they don't have Ebron. Gentry's the only guy that's going to be out there. And I don't know, that kind of makes me like Claypool. Going back to as much as I don't want to go back to the well on Claypool, but we didn't really talk about him. I just think I think that Steelers spot is interesting. That game as a whole is just very interesting with all the missing pieces, but we don't have to go back and touch on Claypool. I just think, I don't know if I'll even play any Steelers because that offense is kind of dusty with Big Ben still back there. I just don't know that I can get there. But it is interesting, with Gentry being there. He's pretty much min price against Kansas City, who we've always targeted tight ends against Kansas City.
He's $2,800. Good old 6'8".
Yeah, and Big Ben loves tight ends. I mean, Heath Miller, Eric Ebron, Freiermuth, Big Ben will just sort of the tight end position. So I don't hate it, especially if Noah Gray were to get popular and you want a cheap tight end. He's interesting on the other side of that game. Not sure I'm going to get there, but I wanted to at least throw his name out there.
Yeah, okay. All right. So let's go ahead and jump over to the defenses. $4,100 for the Bucks, $3,600 for the Eagles, $3,500 for Chiefs, $3,400 for Chargers. Bills are $3,200, Rams are $3,100, Ravens are $3,100, Seahawks are $3K, and the Steelers are $3K. And then the kind of the punt defense, you have the Panthers at $23, the Texans at $24, the Vikings at $2,400, the Bears at $2,500, the Giants at $2,500, Falcons at $26, the Lions at $26, and then you have kind of the Jaguars at $27. What defense are you wanting to play this week?
There's two. It's Panthers against the injury-riddled Bucks, and it's the Falcons against the Jared Goff-less Lions. If whoever would QB them, I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, and I'll say this about the Falcons. The Falcons have been like a little sneaky defense this year. They have week 14 against Carolina. They had 13 DK points, and they had 7, 6, 6, which isn't great, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with that. You at $2,600 defense, if they can get you 6 to 8 DK points, I mean, you're fine with that with what it'll allow you to do with the rest of your team, right? As long as there's no defense that just goes off and just goes nuclear, that goes off and gives you 20. But there's so much variance to to the defense, the DSTs That's why we always talk about paying down for defense, because it doesn't ever really make sense to me to pay up for a defense. I would hate myself if I paid 30 or 4,100 for the Bucks and they don't get there. Because if they only get you 6, you're fucked. You're So I don't mind the Panthers at 2,300. I think I would prefer. I think I prefer paying up a little bit more. I think the Falcons, makes a lot of sense. I actually think the Jags at 2,700 make a lot of sense as well. They are a defense that has, again, they have a little bit of upside. We've seen a couple of games from them this year where they've been able to, and let's face it, Zach Wilson's terrible. And so Zach Wilson can definitely throw a couple picks here. And so I don't mind getting to him at $2,700 either. Getting to them.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
So those are kind of where I'm at. If I was going to pay up for a defense, I don't know, none of them really stand out to me as just excellent options. The Raiders, excuse me. I have to bring up the Raiders. Sorry. I would be doing a disservice to it if I did not bring up the Raiders at $2,900 are also definitely in play. That's probably what I would be looking at, because Drew Lock starting. Yeah. And we know Drew Lock is a walking turnover. That guy is a gunslinger, tries to fit it into spots he shouldn't, makes really bad decisions with the ball. So,
yeah, I don't hate that at all.
Yeah. So, I think the Raiders are also in play at 2,900. So, with that being said, that's the slate. Let's go ahead and build this lineup.
Let's do it.
So, I started off last week. Maddie, you started off this week.
If you started it off last week, let's keep the good mojo going. You start us off again.
Well, I don't know. That didn't. I picked quarterback. I'm not picking a quarterback this time. Let's see. where do I want to go? Let's lock in Jamar Chase, 7,100.
I like it. James Robinson, 5,900.
Should we lock in the chalk that is Justin Jackson, or
I'm good with it.
Okay.
Throw in Cup too.
$9,100 Cup. So let's get a quarterback. I think we could go Burrow, but I'm gonna go. Okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm going Jalen Hurts naked.
I'm good with that. Byron Pringle. I type that one in because you otherwise you're gonna break your finger from scrolling.
Yeah. Can we do it? Can I make this? Let's see. Let's see if I can make this work. Can we do it? Ooh. We might have to see if we can do this. How do you feel about playing Justin Jefferson as a mini stack with Cup?
I'm good with it.
Okay, so that would leave $2,950. So we have to pay down at defense. You want to lock in the Panthers? It would leave $3,600 at tight end.
So let's go. I mean, at that point, we just play Gray, and then you play any defense you want at 3,400 or lower. So the Raiders, probably
3,400.
Unless you want to play the Chargers, because isn't Brandon Cooks out?
Yeah,
Houston. Yeah, so I'd be good with the Chargers against Houston if you want.
Yeah, but Joey Bosa's out. He's on COVID. I mean,
I'm good with the Raiders.
Not that that means they can't get there, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm good with the Raiders.
Does this feel like a tournament winning team? Jalen Hurts, James Robinson, Justin Jackson, Jamar Chase, Cup, Pringle, Gray, Justin Jefferson.
They can get there.
I like that squad. 500 left on the table. Gives us a little bit of playing room in case some things change. We get some other news come out. If Kelsey plays or Tyreek comes back. I think that'll change some things up. But we have enough spots to be able to make some moves. So, all right, let's lock that one in. So that's the final lineup. Hurts, Robinson, Jackson, Chase, Cup, Pringle, Noah Gray, Justin Jefferson, and Raiders. Looks like Walito's got one. Stafford, Monty, J-Rob, Cup, Jefferson, AB, Komet, Pringle, Bears D. I like that team too.
That is a good team.
That is a strong team.
I'm good with that. I just playing Stafford with Cup as getting exposure to one of the highest total game on the slate, like we mentioned at the top of the show. That there's that one game, Minnesota and LAR. That's because Walito has learned as he's coming here the last 4 weeks saying, I'm playing Russell Wilson this week. 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 Finally, Walito has come back to the dark side to say Russell Wilson sucks. But yeah, I like the Stafford play with getting exposure to the highest total game on the slate. There's only one total over 46, and that's the Rams game.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, Will. Happy to have you here, buddy.
Yeah. So before we get out of here, let's so we can wrap this up really quickly. I know, I still got to get this put out on the pod. So people on the pod can listen to this. Obviously Christmas is coming up. We're 24 hours away, right? Or roughly so. Christmas Eve is actually for you is already Christmas Eve. Over there on the East Coast. Here it is. About 45 minutes away here, and the Central and here in Missouri. But so, what are some stuff that's non-football stuff that you're looking forward to? Obviously, hanging out with family. Is there a certain meal that you or a side dish for Christmas that's different from Thanksgiving that you look forward to, or what?
Actually, yes. So it's in my wife's side of the family. Her grandmother does a brisket on Christmas. That, oh man, I love brisket. Like anytime we go to a barbecue restaurant, I always get brisket, and I tend to side with brisket more than pulled pork, but I'm a big brisket guy, and so I tend to have one of the most full plates of brisket at the Christmas table on
Did
Christmas.
she smoke it?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Have you been to Kansas City?
No, I have not. I've been to Memphis.
No, it's not.
It's different barbecue, I know, but that's as far west as I've gone.
But if you, so if you ever come to Kansas City, you'll have to let me know, and we'll do the tour of barbecue, and I'll take you around and get you some good brisket. So
yeah, I love brisket. Brisket's so good. But yeah, that is the one dish that I look forward to, and then just a tradition that I've always had with my family growing up. As long as we behaved at church on Christmas Eve, me and my two brothers always got to open a present the night before. So me and my wife will be heading down to see my parents tomorrow night after church. So we will get to continue the tradition of opening a present on Christmas Eve night. So that'll be pretty cool. Because with the baby coming next year, that we might not get to do that. I'm not sure we'll be traveling, and I don't know how it's going to be. So this may be one of the last times we get to do that. So
yeah, because I guess baby will be less than about 6-7
about 6 months. Yeah, 7 months.
I will say this, not so much the first year, but once they get to 2-3, once they start to be able to kind of understand what's going on and know what's happening, Christmas just takes off to a whole other level of awesomeness because of being able to see their reaction.
And that's why my wife, we actually were talking about this at dinner tonight. She was saying, it's you want to be in your own house on Christmas morning to see, the kids' reaction and everything. So that's kind of why I say, we might not get to go down there and do the whole Christmas Eve open a gift with my family anymore, but we're still gonna still obviously make the trip down there and see family. It's just not gonna be on
I'm sure
Christmas
your
Eve
family
night.
may end up coming up,
and they may end up
everybody wants to be there
yeah.
for baby first.
Absolutely,
everyone wants
absolutely.
To be there
we will. I guarantee you, we will be hosting Christmas next year.
Even though the baby has no idea what's going on at all, nothing, especially at that age, 6 months. I mean, but even once they're a year and a half, because my daughter, she is a year and 3 months, 15 months old or whatever. So she's has no idea what Christmas is either yet. But once they hit that point, but my older son, who is 10, the worst thing I ever did, the worst experience I ever had was he was acting up, but he was never really a kid that ever really did. I was blessed with him, and that he was a really, really good kid. But one night he was acting up, and they have this app that you can call Santa with, and they'll call back, and you can say he's been naughty, right? And so Santa calls, and Bryson, he was probably 4, and so it calls. He's 4 or 5, and he calls, right? And it's oh, Bryson, I heard that that you've had a bad attitude today. As of right now, we put you on the naughty list. And his face went from happy that it was Santa to that face that kids make when they're about to bawl.
Yeah.
I felt destroyed. I felt like the worst human ever, right?
That is hilarious. I'm gonna have to
just starts bawling his eyes out, right? And so finally it hangs up, whatever. And he was like, "Oh my God, I'm on the naughty list. I'm so terrible," all this stuff. And I was like, "Listen," I was like, "You have a good day tomorrow." I was like, you can get put right back on the nice list. I mean, I was trying to calm him down. Listen, man, it's cool. We can get you back on there tomorrow. So I called him back. And
you're running out of time, but we can get you back.
Yeah, and I get home, and he was all and I get home from work or whatever. He was like, "I've been good all day. I've been good all day. I've been good." I'm like, "No, you have. You're back. I think you're back on it. Let's call." And he called, and he was all happy after that. And I was like, "Oh my God, I felt this big, just ruined a 4-year-old's life." So,
it's hilarious. Oh man,
but those funny. I will say, when you have kids, those are the things that make it the best. I don't really care about me anymore; it's about them, And
that's right.
Yeah, having them experience it and have fun with it. So, anyways,
What about you? You got anything you're excited?
We go. I go over on Christmas. We alternate every year. This year on Christmas Eve, we go over to my family's house, and then on Christmas Day, we go over to her dad's, and then we just alternate every year. with it. So, which is good because I don't know, she can't hear me, but her dad's side has the worst cooking ever. Like it is really bad. Like really, really bad. Like when I'm saying like they cook stuff in like microwaves and stuff. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and so like my parents though, like it's great, excellent food. You know, everybody brings food over, everybody's excellent, like it's just great food. But then her family, it's like I'm fasting at that day. I just fast.
That's funny.
So yeah, that's what we do. So anyway,
I mean, we've all been to family gatherings like that, right?
Yeah.
But then you've got ones that it's the all home cooked food, and those are great.
Yes. So, anyways, I am looking for that, and thankfully, we get 2 games this year. We get 2 games on Christmas, and they're actually good games, right? I would argue that this 2-game slate's better than the 3-game slate we got for Thanksgiving, right?
And I'm actually kind of glad that there's football because it might keep me from playing the NBA Christmas Day slate.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I know now you've got some extra money in your account. You might end up throwing money at NBA, but I tend to always play the NBA slate and I never do good at it. But maybe with, having football action on.
The Packers Browns isn't obviously as sexy, but you still get the Packers side of things. And then, but the Colts Cardinals game could be
that could be fun.
Awesome. It could be a great game. Two good offenses. Really plays well into Jonathan Taylor because we know that the Cardinals defense just gets absolutely gashed on the ground, and that's what Jonathan Taylor could rip off 200 yards in this game. So
absolutely,
things set up greatly for him. So, anyways, those 2 games will be fun to start things off with for this weekend. But with that being said, I think we should get out of here, get everybody, on. I hope everybody has a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Christmas. We will be back again next Thursday before New Year's Eve, before everybody gets wild and throws down. But I hope everybody has a wonderful Christmas. I hope everybody gets everything they want. I hope your kids or your family has a great time. Be safe, and we will. And like I said, let's win some money this weekend. Put some money in our pockets. We will see you guys on the next one. Have a Merry Christmas, and we will see you guys again next week. We out!
We out!